Welcome everyone. This is a series of short videos that we're doing just around the report that we published around the key trends in Southeast Asia. So before we start, hopefully asking questions, I just wondered whether my panelists could introduce themselves, and I'll start with you, Haike.
Thanks, Cecilia. So, hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Haike Manning. I'm the Executive Director for Acumen for Southeast Asia, responsible for overseeing our operations across the 5 locations where we have staff in Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia.
Hi, I'm Raji, the Country Director for Malaysia, Acumen Southeast Asia, as well as Head of Customer Experience for Southeast Asia. So I just recently joined Acumen. Really pleased to join such a great organization. And I'm responsible mainly for driving the business in Malaysian operations and also ensuring that our delivery is on par in Southeast Asia.
Thank you. So I just want to start off, both of you are very seasoned and professionals in the international education landscape. Can I just ask, as professionals supporting international education, what are the key issues that come to you for Vietnam, for example, Haike? What are the main priorities that you're thinking of?
You know, I've been in Vietnam now for almost 12 years, kind of becoming part of the furniture almost, but anyway. And I think, you know, this country is like a country on the move, seriously. There's just so much going on here. Things are changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think when we're thinking about international education and how international education providers might respond to that, I think the first thing I think about is the world is coming to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of competition. There's a huge amount of opportunity as well. And so I think when you're thinking about how, as an international institution, you're going to respond to that competition, a lot of the things that you're going to be doing are going to be trying to make sure that you stand out from the crowd, either in terms of like the offering that you have, you know, the specialist subject fields you have, but also in terms of the student journey. So how good you are at actually really making sure that the students, the families, the agents that are supporting you feel really, really well supported. So I think that's one thing that comes out for me at the moment, is a sense of it's such a dynamic, interesting, vibrant market. You really need to respond to that and be very consumer driven and centric in the way in which you're acting. So that would be the first thing. And just one other thing I would mention as well, which is top of mind for me, and I think which comes out a little bit in the key trends report that we've done, is Vietnam's economy is changing super quick.
Yes.
As well. And so the labour market needs and the training needs are changing as well. So, you know, I think if you look back maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was going to be like people would come and do business programs or promote business programs. But actually that's not necessarily where Vietnam's economy is now. And it's moving rapidly towards advanced technologies and high-end services as well. And so institutions, and when I'm thinking about how we advise institutions should be really thinking about how what they're offering responds to the changing needs of Vietnam's economy.
Just picking up on that, actually, Haike, do you see actually institutions doing that sort of piece of research or consultancy to help inform their strategy? Because the point that you make is really a strong point. Things change so quickly and rapidly. Do you get a sense that institutions are doing that piece of crucial research to help inform strategy?
You know, you see obviously different behaviours across, you know, and there are lots of different institutions and actors here. What I do think is that, you know, a lot of institutions are really smart in terms of coming in and you know, talking to their stakeholders and trying to get a sense of it. But I do think there's probably a gap and an opportunity for people to really get a little bit more forensic about it and to understand, okay, where are the supply, the the demand and the supply gaps for Vietnam. And just to give you one example, there's a huge debate and huge discussion going on at the moment in Vietnam, which is being driven by highest political level around the development of semiconductor industry in Vietnam. And Vietnam doesn't have a semiconductor industry at the moment, but there's a lot of geopolitical support and investment which is going to come in behind that. And that's going to create a massive training and upskilling opportunity for this country. And so for people to understand that and to respond to that, I think it's going to be really important.
Brilliant. Thank you, Haike. For Malaysia, Raji, what's so the key issues that are top of your mind?
Being Malaysian and, being in the industry for a bit now, Malaysia is seen as a very mature market for international education, and the expectation of, student numbers on year-to-year basis, it's high, right? Like we can see in our key trend report that in 2021-2022, Malaysia is the highest setting market of the UK. We had 12,135 students, which is much higher than all the other Southeast Asian countries. And when we look at the overall trend, there is a declining trend in international students going overseas. So Malaysia is seen as a very mature market. And having said that, now the importance of transnational education, as we know, Malaysia is full to about 10 foreign branch campuses, mainly Australian and the UK, right? So I think there's a lot of options available, similarly to Vietnam. The options are varying. It varies, right? Like students do want to start here probably and then move on. And some branch campuses are also working very closely with both campus to build programs that are highly attractive that will allow you to start in Malaysia and complete in the home campus. So I think these are some of the changing trends that international universities should take note of, and also see what are some of the opportunities in the transnational education. Like, we have opportunities for shorter courses and also programs that require upskilling and so on. So I think for Malaysia, the market is changing. It will still remain, in my opinion, as one of our most lucrative market in Southeast Asia. And I think international universities, international countries can take advantage of that.
Thank you, Raji. You touched on TNE. Yeah. So Southeast Asia is traditionally a strong TNE market. How do you see this developing in coming years?
I'd like to touch on some of the developments that I've seen. Of course, in Malaysia, many universities are realizing the importance of having a base in the Southeast Asian countries. We saw that with Indonesia recently. Although all these years, we felt that, Malaysia has more branch campuses, and we see that in Vietnam as well. Acumen is a huge success story for Vietnam, and we recently saw Monash as, they started the campus not so recent, but yeah, we see that growing. We see partnership between DKIM as well, and I think that's going to grow even more. Probably some other countries will follow suit because the interest is already there, and it's going to continue in that direction. And in Malaysia, we can see there's a big appetite for micro-credentials. For example, recently there's a research that shows that Malaysia's lack of cybersecurity professionals. We need thousands of cybersecurity professionals. One of the branch campus took advantage of this by, creating a transfer program to another country. So I think the need for micro-credential, micro-credential like TNE is going to grow exponentially. So this is what I think.
Haike, just on the TNE topic as well, what are your thoughts about universities targeting sort of professionals? So not just student, the traditional TNE models that we've always done. What do you see are the new trends that you foresee developing in traditional markets, mature markets like Malaysia, but then new emerging markets like Indonesia and also Vietnam?
The way I would answer this is by maybe name-checking a report that we did last year called Vietnam Voices, which was a first-of-its-kind report looking at consumer attitudes towards transnational education in Vietnam. And one of the questions that we asked parents was we said, where do you see your child's future? And I think if we'd asked that question maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the answer would have been, it's probably overseas.
Yeah.
But now it was almost half and half saying overseas and half saying Vietnam, which was super interesting to us. And so what that suggests to us is that actually increasingly in these dynamic, fast-growing economies like Vietnam and Indonesia and places like this, the opportunity and the work and the professional opportunity is here. So what does that mean in terms of, let's say you're a professional in one of these countries and you're thinking about upskilling to stay abreast of cybersecurity or, digital skills for leaders or something like that. You're not going to jump on a plane and go and, drop out of, the employment ecosystem you're in for 6 months or a year or something like that. You're going to want to do your credential here while you're working, and you're going to want to have flexibility in terms of how you do it. So I think absolutely there is going to be a really interesting market for this. I think, if I'm really honest, I think that in some cases, some places are still, the market is certainly not developed yet. So it's a bit of a frontier market for example, executive education, including sort of, online MBAs and things like that. But it will come. And I think Malaysia is a really good example of a more mature market, if I can put it that way, where we can already see that appetite growing. And I think countries like Vietnam and Indonesia will follow as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a final question just on this topic as well is around compliance. So I think there's, sometimes institutions might be nervous about going into a new market. I think what should they be aware of? What do you think are the kind of key things that they need to be aware of in terms of operating in a new market?
So maybe I'll just take an example of Vietnam because there are lots of things going on here that I think institutions do need to be aware of, kind of underlying kind of regulatory changes and things like that people need to be aware of. I think firstly on the T&E side, you have a whole series of regulations that govern transnational education, Decree 86 being kind of the core regulation, but that's constantly under review and is being amended. So people need to kind of really be across what's in the regulations and understand how they should be operating within that framework. But more broadly as well, what we're seeing is, in terms of the operating environment here, there are new digital marketing restrictions that have come in Vietnam, and there are also new data protection laws that have come in Vietnam as well. And these are very much targeted around transfer and protection of Vietnamese citizens' personal data. So for institutions that are thinking about, sort of receiving data offshore, that piece is really, really important to make sure that whoever's acting on their behalf in country is fully compliant with these data protection requirements. And so I think that alongside the very, very complex labour laws that exist here in terms of how you employ people legally, these things are all things that institutions who are looking to have some sort of engagement here need to be thinking about.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Haike. What about Malaysia, Raji?
I'd like to echo Haike's point just now, talking about when they're coming into a new country. For example, if they've not recruited from Malaysia coming into wages, that's when us, Acumen, we come on board to assist in terms of them understanding the regulation and compliance. But in Malaysia, as a context, right, it's also really important to understand what the local regulations are. What are some of the entry requirements for T&E that is set by the Malaysian government as well. I think it's really important for the international universities to understand what those are, because we might have a different entry points in the home campus, but for some programs, for some niche programs, it's really important to understand the regulatory requirements. Because, for example, for medicine, right, we have the education, requirements, but we also have the health ministry requirements. So I think these are some of the things that it will be great for universities to understand and take in when they're considering selling their food in a Southeast Asian country. But I also would like to branch out, and I think it's really important to point out, right, the cultural difference. So I think compliance is one. The cultural difference is something that, the cultural sensitivity to how businesses operate in these countries is really, really important for me to see. Yeah.
Thank you, Raji. So that's just a little snapshot from two excellent panelists who have extensive experience in the international education sector for Southeast Asia. Thank you for joining us.